He didn't recognize me. That was the first punch in the gut, clean, quiet, sharp. Wallace Granger walked right past me in the lobby of Blackstone Tower like I was just another pleated nobody with calloused hands and a discount wristwatch. No nod, no squint of suspicion, not even a flicker of memory. Maybe because last time he saw me, I was wearing a maintenance vest soaked in refrigerant and shame. Maybe because when he fired me, I didn't beg, just stood there, gripping a wrench like a crucifix, and watched him grin through those perfect veneers like he hadn't just bulldozed 20 years of loyalty into a cost reduction strategy. He didn't see me now, but I saw him. Saw the way he adjusted his cufflinks like they mattered more than names. Saw the briefcase swinging at his side, same crocodile skin model Olivia once asked him about back when she was interning under him and still thought mentors meant something. She came home that day shaking. Not crying, Olivia doesn't cry, she said. He made me take notes on a meeting I wasn't allowed to speak in. Then he patted my head. Called me decorative initiative. She said it like she was spitting poison from her mouth. He told everyone I was just here because of you. That same night, she disconnected every social media account, down her coding portfolio, canceled her lease. She disappeared, not just from the world but from me. I had no idea where she went, she didn't even leave a note. And now, out of nowhere, I'd received a manila envelope slipped under my apartment door. No return address, no message. Just one line on the first page. Come see what tinsel builds when you throw it into the fire. And beneath it, an executive clearance badge. Ferocity and Ventures. Didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the dark kitchen with the badge in my hand and the hum of the refrigerator buzzing like distant applause. My daughter was alive. Not just alive, moving. But why reach out now? Why here? At exactly 8:59 a.m., the elevator doors parted like a curtain and there she was. Olivia? Hair tied back in a jet black knot, blazer cut so sharp it could wound. She didn't smile. Didn't cry, stepped forward and hugged me with both arms like she'd been holding her breath for 3 years, and finally exhaled. One word passed between us and her breath, like a bullet slipping into a chamber. Watch. She took my hand and led me through double glass doors into a conference room too sleek for anything but cruelty. There, already seated, were 6 men in tailored silence. I saw logos on their tablets: Firexion, Tierforge, Stratus IQ. And then, Wallace, at the head of the table, legs crossed, latte steaming beside his untouched iPad. He was mid-sentence, droning on about brand realignment when Olivia stepped forward. Apologies, she said. You're in the wrong seat, Mr. Granger. He blinked. Laughed like a man who's never been corrected by anyone not wearing heels. And who are you to tell me that? Olivia placed a single black folder on the table. Opened it. Turned it toward him. Just 3 words on the first page, bold and precise. Final acquisition notice. Wallace's lips stopped mid-smirk. What the hell is this? The end of your reign, Olivia said, voice so calm it echoed. He laughed again, but it sounded like glass. You're bluffing. I stepped forward. She's not, I said, and I'm not just her father. Wallace's eyes darted to me, finally registering. I saw it hit him. I watched the blood drain like water from a burst pipe. You, he said, with her. I smiled. No, I said, she runs the company. I'm just here to enjoy the view. And that's when the boardroom doors locked behind us. What Olivia said next, that's what really detonated the room. But we'll get there. Wallace leaned back in his chair like he still owned gravity. Like the nameplate in front of him hadn't just become decorative. His jaw worked like he was chewing a rusty nail, but his voice stayed smug, brand of corporate arrogance that believes a good smirk can still win wars. This is some stunt, he said, gesturing at the folder with a flick of his fingers like it might be contagious. You think hostile takeovers work just because you show up with a new suit and a pretty face? Olivia didn't flinch. Check the date on that document, she said, tone clipped and lethal. It's not a stunt, Wallace. It's your stunt, folding in on itself, been bleeding capital for 6 quarters, and your board's been looking for a scapegoat. Congratulations, they found one. He reached for the folder, flipping pages with the energy of a man still bargaining with delusion. His eyes scanned and then squinted. A pause. His finger stopped on a number. You bought controlling shares through a shell firm? 2, Olivia said, just to make it poetic. One of the men seated to Wallace's left cleared his throat, the CFO, sunken-eyed man who looked like he slept on spreadsheets and coffee grinds. It's real, Wallace. We verified it last week. She holds 58% voting authority, as of this morning. Silence dropped like a hammer. I didn't look at Wallace, I watched the others. One board member slowly closed his laptop. Another, Dinesh, if memory served, turned his chair just slightly toward Olivia. Not out of deference, out of survival instinct. Wallace reached for his latte, his hand shook. This is ridiculous, he muttered. You don't even have experience. You're a child playing with capital markets. This company needs what it hasn't had in years, Olivia snapped. Vision, accountability, and less sexual harassment lawsuits buried under NDAs. That one landed. You could feel the air shift, like someone had cracked a window in a sealed room. The liar in the corner winced. Wallace's face went a shade paler. Olivia walked around the table now, slow, deliberate, manicured fingers trailing along the high-gloss surface. You remember what you said to me 3 years ago? She asked. I do, word for word. Wallace didn't answer. You said you're not here to think, you're here to observe. Pretty girls with opinions make clients uncomfortable. She stopped behind him. Guess what makes shareholders really uncomfortable, Wallace? He turned, glaring up at her. She leaned down, voice like a blade drawn behind velvet. Unsecured personal loans, mistress from a corporate travel account. The room froze. Wallace's face dropped, slow and sour like milk curdling in real time. The CFO closed his eyes. 2 phones buzzed. One man stood and walked to the window without a word. Funny thing, Olivia continued, straightening up. Interns have ears, some even have USB recorders. Wallace stood, chest puffed like a dying rooster. You think this is over? He barked. I built this company from nothing, built it on the backs of people you never bothered to remember. I interrupted, stepping forward. Like the man who kept your servers from frying while you were in Monaco. Or the intern who brought you coffee while writing her own code at night to fix your broken CRM. You're not better than me. Wallace shouted, red now. You're nothing without me. I'm everything because of you, Olivia said, deadly calm. You lit the fire. I just learned how to forge steel. And then, phone buzzed, she glanced down. Nodded. To our guests, she said, turning to the board, a more detailed audit will be distributed within the hour. Until then, Mr. Granger's access to all systems and accounts has been suspended. Security stepped into the room without a word. Wallace's hands flew up. You can't do this. You're bluffing. You're still just some intern. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Instead, she turned to me. Dad, do you want to do the honors? Walked over to Wallace. Looked him in the eyes for the first time since he made me pack my toolbox in silence. And then I slid a small black box from my coat pocket and handed it to security. Inside, Wallace's keycard now deactivated, his name badge, and a note, returned to sender. Unfit for leadership. Security placed a gentle hand on his arm. And Wallace Granger, the man who mocked my daughter's potential, and erased my name with the stroke of a pen, slid out of his own empire by 2 guards in polished shoes and tight expressions. But what came next? That is where things started getting interesting. They escorted him out like he was contagious. Wallace didn't go quietly, of course. His voice echoed down the corridor even after the doors closed, spitting legal threats and legacy tantrums like a busted sprinkler system. But no one moved. No one followed. The moment the lock clicked behind him, air in that boardroom changed, like someone had drained the poison from the room, and now everyone was afraid to breathe it back in. Olivia didn't look at anyone. She just walked to the head of the table, the seat Wallace had tried to defend with nothing but ego, and sat down. She adjusted her blazer, crossed one leg over the other, rested her hands calmly on the glass surface like she'd been rehearsing for this moment in her mind every night for years. I'll make this short, said, glancing around the table. We're not salvaging Wallace's vision. We're erasing it. No one argued. She tapped her tablet and the monitor behind her lit up. Firex restructure Q1 strategy. But my attention wasn't on the screen. It was on the man across the table from me. Bradley Cole, head of product development, ex-Harvard, prides himself on staying out of drama. The type who wears Patagonia vests over dress shirts and calls himself data-driven. His eyes told a different story, nervous, darting. Like he knew something was about to slip loose. And sure enough, Olivia turned toward him. Brad, she said, polite but flat. Would you like to tell the board why your division spent $6.2 million on consulting fees last quarter without a single documented deliverable? His mouth opened, closed. Those were Wallace's directives. He wanted agility, no. He wanted silence. Olivia cut in. You gave it to him in bulk. I've already frozen the transfer accounts. Our forensic audit begins Monday. If you're clean, you'll stay. If not, she looked at security still standing by the door, you'll leave the same way he did. I saw it then, the shudder of a crumbling castle. One by one, the boardroom's good soldiers began to realize their general had been a fraud. And the girl they all once ignored now had the ledger, and the matches. Brad gulped and sat back. His fingers trembled as they tapped something under the table. Probably messaging legal. Probably too late. Olivia continued. This company, she said, was built on ideas. My ideas, in fact. You might remember a platform proposal 3 years ago, Osiris. Scalable, AI-driven, modular. Dinesh frowned. Wallace said it was too ambitious. It was, she replied, too ambitious for him. Then she tapped again. The screen behind her changed. Cyrus prototype live demo beta clients confirmed. You could hear the click of jaws snapping shut around the room. I built it myself. Nights, weekends. After your meetings, she said, after I was dismissed. After Wallace told me to stop playing CEO. And then calmly, I stopped playing. I felt my throat tighten, not because I was proud, though God I was, but because I realized something darker. This wasn't just revenge. This was resurrection. He wasn't burning Wallace's legacy for sport. She was raising something else in its place. Something leaner, smarter, less polite, and more dangerous. The board began murmuring now, some impressed, some terrified, some both. But no one doubted who ran the room anymore. Any objections, she asked. Silence. Good. She turned to me then. Just for a second. Just enough for that crack to show in her armor, flicker of the girl who used to fall asleep on schematics with a crayon in her hand. I gave her a nod. Didn't need words, she understood. But the real twist, it hadn't even walked through the door yet, because Wallace wasn't working alone. And the next face to enter that room would unravel everything. The door opened without a knock. Everyone turned, first out of reflex, then in something closer to dread. And in walked Avery Keene. Silk tie, salt and pepper hair, it's like an oil painting of confidence. CEO of Stratus IQ, one of Virekson's oldest partners. Also known, at least in more gossipy corners of the industry, as Wallace's shadow. Wherever Wallace schemed, Avery supplied the legal pads and champagne. Old money, old tricks, old loyalties. His smile hit the room like static. Well, he said, eyes settling on Olivia. Looks like someone graduated from pouring coffee. Saw Olivia's hand tighten slightly on the tablet, but she didn't blink, didn't flinch. Funny, she replied, you still sound like a man who thinks mergers are foreplay. That drew a few coughs and not-so-hidden smirks from the board. Avery's smile twitched, like someone had stepped on his designer loafers. He moved toward the table like he owned it, like she wasn't the one holding the reins. I assume you think today was a win, he said, tone dripping with patient condescension. But see, here's the thing, Olivia, Virekson doesn't just exist in your little portfolio bubble. We're integrated, cross-streamed. You don't just buy us, you buy liabilities, and some of those liabilities are very sticky. Olivia stood calm, poised. I'm aware of the liabilities, she said. In fact, I invited them. She tapped her tablet again, screen behind her lit up. Stratus IQ, fraudulent licensing agreements, internal review findings. Confidential. Avery's face lost its gloss in half a heartbeat. You thought Wallace could bury those fake software bundles under joint development contracts, she said. But your billing scheme left a trail. See, interns don't just fetch coffee anymore. Some of them write scripts. I bit back a laugh. Avery looked like he'd swallowed a cold coin. In case you're wondering, Olivia continued. We bought controlling interest in your offshore shell too. The one you used to route patent filings through the Cayman front. So yes, your assets, your trademarks, and your entire sandbox. Mine now, you can't do this, he hissed. She tilted her head. Already did. Security took a step toward him. He didn't move. Olivia, he tried, soft now, oily, desperate. We could work together. You had your shot, she said, her voice flat. When I was 19 and pitched you a decentralized licensing platform, you laughed off the room. Said, and I quote, it's cute when interns want to play CEO. She walked toward him slowly, every heel click an indictment. But here's the thing about playing CEO, Avery. I took notes. She handed him a single envelope. He opened it with shaky fingers. Inside, a court-issued breach of contract notice. Personal. Dated today. Got 48 hours to settle, she said. After that, we file public. He stared at her, something like actual fear crawling up behind his eyes. You've got no idea what you're walking into, he said, quieter now. I do, Olivia replied. That's what scares you. Avery turned and left, no smirk, no quip, just the sound of shoes that suddenly didn't fit right on the polished floor. When the door closed, Olivia sat back down like nothing had happened. But I saw it, micro-tremor in her jaw at the barely there sigh. She was holding back a storm, she always had. And then her phone buzzed again. She glanced down. Paused. I need 5 minutes, she said to the board, alone. They stood without hesitation, even Brad, even the CFO. When the room cleared, I looked at her. Really looked. What is it? She turned the screen to face me. It was an email, no subject, no signature. Just one line, you missed someone. And they're coming. Gut went cold. Because I knew that tone, that style. Wallace may have been the tyrant, but someone else had written the playbook. The message was unsigned, but the silence that followed it screamed one name. Elliot Vance. I hadn't heard that name in years, not since the corporate bloodbath of 17 when 3 tech giants tried to swallow each other, and only Elliot walked away with both hands still on the wheel. Back then, he'd been the ghost behind Wallace. Never in photos, ever on press releases. Just a whisper in quarterly reports. He was the kind of man who showed up in footnotes and NDAs, until your stock started bleeding and nobody knew why. He'd recruited Wallace, funded him, co-signed the first deal that made Virexon a household name. But the deal always came with teeth. And once Wallace got fat enough on ego to forget who wrote the checks, Elliot disappeared. Or so we thought. Livia stared at the screen like it might blink back. "Did you know?" she asked, not accusing, just quiet. Almost like she didn't want the answer. "I knew of him," I said. "He sponsored Wallace's first round. He was there when they opened the Chicago office. But I never met him. Hell, most people didn't. He's not a man, Liv. He's a move, a strategy in human form." Her jaw tensed. "He was the first man who told Wallace I wasn't worth promoting." I sat down slowly. "What does he want now?" She didn't answer. Just stood, grabbed her coat, and handed me a flash drive. "If anything happens," she said, "you get this to Lauren Timmons at the Post. She's clean. She's been sitting on documents I couldn't publish without crossing the line. This," she tapped the drive, "finishes it." "You're not going to cross it now?" I asked. She paused, eyes flicking toward the conference room window where the skyline sliced through the sky like a lie held together by steel. "I'm going to burn the line." We exited to the elevator and descended in silence. The building groaned like it was trying to hold its breath. Olivia's phone buzzed again. She ignored it. When the doors opened into the marble lobby, the world outside had changed. A black Maybach was already waiting at the curb. Not Wallace's kind of luxury, real money. The kind that doesn't glitter. The kind that absorbs light. And standing beside it, coat folded over his arm like he was about to dine with royalty, was Elliot Vance. He looked normal. That was the most terrifying thing. Tan trench, blue scarf, silver hair cut short, not a wrinkle in sight. But something about his stillness felt unnatural, like the air around him was waiting for permission to move. He smiled when he saw us, not warm, not cold. Just exact. "Olivia," he said, voice like marble polished with honey, "was wondering when you'd finally stop hiding behind proxies." Olivia didn't stop walking until she was close enough to feel the heat off the car's engine. "I wasn't hiding," she said. "I was studying." Elliot's smile twitched. "Then let me save you the tuition. You've made a critical mistake." "You mean buying the company that was already bleeding out?" "No," he said, making it personal. He turned to me next. And that's when I realized he wasn't here for Olivia, he was here for me. "You must be Todd," he said, extending a gloved hand. "The father, the mechanic. The reason she's in the ring." I didn't shake it. "You don't get to make this sentimental," I said. "You engineered the man who humiliated her, who fired me, who tried to erase both of us." Elliot chuckled softly. "I didn't engineer Wallace, I deployed him. Like you deploy a virus to test your firewall." He looked at Olivia again. "Now I'm here to see what you've built." "Good," he said, "because I'm going to bury you under it." A pause. Then Elliot stepped forward too close and whispered something I barely caught. "Check your cap table. You're not the only one who came through proxies." Then he slid into the back of the car, the door clicked shut, and the Maybach pulled away without sound. Olivia didn't say a word. She just pulled out her phone, tapped through something fast, and then her face went still. "What is it?" I asked. She turned the screen to me. "Shareholder ledger." And there, buried in a Cayman fund she hadn't flagged, EV. Capital Holdings, 14.3% stake. Voting rights active, son of a bitch, she whispered. And right then we both understood. Wallace was the opening act, Elliot was the storm. Olivia didn't sleep that night. I know because I didn't either. I heard her pacing the apartment floor above me, slow and methodical like she was counting seconds between lightning strikes. At one point, it'd be 3:30 a.m., I caught the scent of burnt coffee and ozone. Like the air itself was bracing for impact. At 6:05 a.m., I found her at the kitchen table, barefoot, hair a mess, laptop open to a spreadsheet that looked like it could diagnose a stock market collapse. The only light in the room came from the screen, and her eyes. "He's been inside from the start," she said, not looking up. "Even before Wallace was disposable. Elliot's been watching, eyeing influence in bits, placing board plants, whispering into funds we thought were clean." She flicked her finger, and another list appeared, anonymous investors linked by bank transfers and IP addresses, like a constellation of ghosts orbiting a black hole. "He owns one of the VC firms that backed me. Through a double-blind Cayman pipeline. Which means," she said, stabbing the screen, "he helped build Obsidian from the beginning." "You're saying your company was never fully mine," she cut in. "He fed capital into me like a gardener feeding poison into the roots. Let me grow. Let me get strong enough to think I was independent. Then waited. To what to choose, Wallace or me? Burn one, keep the other." I sat down slow. "You think he's picking now?" She turned the laptop so I could see the latest SEC filing, timestamped 2 hours ago. Request for emergency board vote CEO review and retention, filed by Evie, Capital Holdings. Votes in 24 hours, she said. He's coming for my seat. That's when the door buzzed, not a knock, not a gentle ping. Buzz like someone leaned on it. She stood, didn't flinch. We opened it together. It wasn't Elliot. It was Bridget Chen, her old friend from Stanford, former co-founder. The one who bailed 2 years ago under amicable terms, but everyone knew it wasn't friendly. Last I'd heard, she moved to Singapore. Started a fintech company, listed every mutual connection. Now here she was, standing in our hallway in an oversized coat and dead eyes. "Hello, Liv," she said. "He sent me." I stepped in front of Olivia instinctively. Bridget raised her hands. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here to warn you." Olivia narrowed her eyes. "You always did love playing both sides." Bridget's voice cracked just slightly. "I tried to warn you about Wallace. About the Cayman accounts. You didn't want to hear it. Leaked my code to him," Olivia said cold. "You sold me out. I tried to protect you from him. But you made it impossible." Olivia didn't blink. "You got scared, so you ran." Bridget nodded. "Yeah, I ran, but I came back. Because Elliot's not just replacing you, he's planning to dismantle Obsidian entirely. A beat? Sell the tech to Stratus IQ. Gut the rest. Frame the collapse on you. Riddy has the PR firm lined up and a whistleblower narrative pre-written. He even floated a rumor about executive burnout. A private clinic in Sweden. It's already in draft form." I saw Olivia's fingers tighten around her phone like she was trying not to crush it. "He's erasing you before you can respond," Bridget said. "That's what he does." Silence. Then Olivia said, "So why tell me?" Bridget exhaled. "'Cause I didn't build that first prototype with Wallace. I built it with you. And maybe I don't get to call myself your friend anymore, but I'm still not ready to watch a man like Elliot destroy something that started with kitchen coffee and whiteboards." Olivia stared at her for a long time. Then finally, "Then help me stop him." Bridget blinked. "How?" And that's when Olivia looked at me. "Dad," she said, "remember that emergency kill switch script I wrote back when we thought Wallace would sell Osiris?" "Yeah," I said slowly. "The one you swore you'd never use?" She nodded. "I lied. And right then a plan started forming, one that didn't just fight Elliot, it would expose him. But pulling it off, we had less than 18 hours, and we'd need to break every rule she ever followed to survive." By 9 a.m., we were no longer playing defense. We were rigging the fuse. Bridget had brought more than warnings, she brought keys. Access codes. Old architecture maps Olivia thought had been erased when Bridget walked out. Turns out, she'd archived everything. Call it guilt, call it insurance. Either way, we now had a skeleton key to Obsidian's entire infrastructure. The plan was simple, and suicidal. At exactly 3 p.m., just as Elliot's emergency board meeting would kick off on the 42nd floor, Olivia would trigger a full platform freeze on Osiris, the AI engine she'd spent 5 years building, the one already demoed to Fortune 500 companies, and hailed as the next frontier in predictive infrastructure. It would go dead. To the outside world, it would look like a catastrophic failure. Total collapse. Investors would panic. Elliot would assume she cracked under pressure. The media would bite the burnout narrative. He'd move in, offer to rescue the company, scoop up the shattered assets for pennies. But he'd be walking into a trap. Because every line of Osiris code had a watermark. And that watermark led to a signature. Not Olivia's, his. The very first commit, dated years back, had been pushed from a server linked to one of Elliot's phantom firms. He hadn't just funded her. He'd seeded the original model, quietly. Illegally. With tech he'd acquired in a shady acquisition 3 companies ago and never disclosed, with stolen property. And that gave Olivia leverage, not just to keep her seat, but to end Elliot Vance. At 1:45 p.m., we arrived at the Obsidian building. Security was already heavier than usual. Elliot's people, probably, hired silence in tailored suits. We took the service elevator. Fewer cameras. Bridget keyed us into the subfloor server room. I hadn't been down there since the early days. I helped install the first backup generators and wired up the HVAC system myself. It smelled the same: metal, ozone, warm silicon. Olivia walked up to the master console, exhaled and plugged in the drive. "Once I start this, there's no rolling it back," she said. "It's not a pause, it's a kill command. Osiris will flatline for 7 minutes. And then," I asked. She tapped a second drive. "Then the real code comes online." She'd built a mirror. A better version, not poisoned by Elliot's fingerprints. It had never been shown, never demoed. It ran faster, leaner, untethered to any outside patents. It was hers and only hers. "Once this goes live," she said, "it'll prove everything else was compromised. Which means Elliot didn't just overreach, he stole proprietary tech from himself." Bridget raised an eyebrow. "That's poetic." Olivia smiled tight. Then she clicked execute. The hum of the servers shifted. Somewhere above us, lights would flicker. Dashboards would go blank. Panic would start to ripple through Elliot's meeting just as he began his speech. 7 minutes, that's all we had, and at minute 4 my phone buzzed. Unknown number, no caller ID, I answered a voice. Calm, hollow, walk away, Todd. I didn't say a word, you're proud, I get it. She's brilliant. But this doesn't end the way you think it does. It was Elliot, you've already lost, I said. He chuckled. I don't lose, I pivot. If you think she's the first prodigy I've made, you're not just naive, you're obsolete. I hung up. Olivia looked at me, I nodded. Then we go faster, she said. At 6:52 left on the clock, Olivia launched the mirror. At 6:59 she sent an anonymous tip with proof of Elliot's hidden commits to every major tech journalist west of the Mississippi. At 7:01, Osiris came back online, faster, cleaner, unchained. And at 7:03, security pounded on the server room door. Too late, it was done. But the final blow, that was still waiting upstairs, in the boardroom, where Elliot Vance was about to find out what happens when the intern you dismissed rewrites the damn operating system. The boardroom was chaos. By the time we stepped off the elevator, half the members were on their phones, one was shouting into a Bluetooth headset, and Elliot stood at the end of the table like a man watching his own reflection crack. Big screen behind him still showed the Osiris failure warning, frozen mid-glitch, the last ghost of the system he thought he controlled. And then, without warning, it vanished, replaced by a new logo. Osiris, Redux. Underneath, a line of code scrolled across the screen in stark white font. Integrity can't be outsourced. Elliot turned slowly, eyes landing on Olivia as if he was seeing her for the first time, realizing too late that the child he once dismissed had grown teeth. What did you do? He said, low, shaking. Olivia walked to the table, laid her phone down and tapped the screen. It projected the SEC filing, the Git commit logs and the ownership metadata, all pointing to Elliot's ghost accounts, all irrefutable. I showed them what you are, she said. And what am I exactly? He asked, voice dripping with contempt. A thief, she said, a manipulator. And soon, line? Phones vibrated around the table, emails coming in, journalists' screenshots, live coverage already trending on tech blogs, shadow founder caught in intellectual property trap, hashtags spawning like wildfire, #Vance collapse, #Obsidian burnback, #not your intern. Elliot lunged. Nodded her at me. You, he snarled. This was you. You filled her head with this righteous nonsense. You built her into this. I didn't move. I just looked him dead in the. She built herself, I said. All I did was teach her how to hold a wrench. Security stepped in before Elliot got too close. He was still hurling threats when they pulled him from the room. This isn't over. You'll see, the market's a wheel and I am the axle. The board didn't respond. They didn't even stand. One by one, they turned back to their screens, already reviewing Olivia's files, already shifting loyalties in real time. By the time the door shut, Elliot Vance had been erased like the typo he'd always been. Olivia stood in the center of the room, alone, glowing with exhaustion and firelight. You okay? I asked. She nodded once. Just once. Then from the back of the room a voice spoke. It was Dinesh, the oldest board member, quiet, observant, the kind who only spoke when the tide was ready to turn. He stood, walked forward, offered a hand. Miss Greer, he said, you have the room. She shook it, firm, direct, no smile. She turned to me. You ready to go? She asked. Where? I said. She looked toward the windows where the skyline bled gold over the edge of the city like a fresh page. To buy something, she said. Like what? She smiled now, small, wicked. Whatever the hell he wanted next. That night, over dinner in a quiet rooftop bar, the news broke in full. Elliot Vance removed from 3 boards. Stratus IQ share prices plummet. Lawsuits pending. And in the corner of the screen, small Chiron, former intern, now runs billion-dollar AI firm. Her father, fired by the old regime, seen at her side. I raised my glass. Olivia clinked it without looking up from her screen. You ever think, I said, that this all started because Wallace didn't like how you poured coffee? She grinned. No. It started when he forgot to learn my name. She took a sip, leaned back, and watched the lights of her city blink like servers coming online, and somewhere across town, in a quiet office stripped of nameplates and legacy, Elliot Vance realized he hadn't just lost a company. He'd created his replacement.